straight away, we're getting some breaking news. There seems to be another player who is throwing her hat into the ring, Penny Mordaunt, who used to be a former defense secretary. She's now saying that she is also in the running to be the leader of the Conservative Party and willing to take up the challenge to, quote-unquote, unite our country, deliver our pledges, and win the next general election. Sanjay Suri joining us live. Sanjay, so she did run in the last face-off that happened after Boris's exit. She was also one of the candidates, but didn't last too long in the race. Why does Penny Mordaunt feel that her chances this time around are better than what it was a couple of months ago?
Well, she would have a head start to enter the race to begin with, going by the election the last time round. She got 105 votes, 213 for Truss and 137 for Rishi Sunak. So if 100 is the threshold, as it is this time, she did cross it, so that would be an encouraging start. But in this race, we've had developments earlier today where Rishi Sunak has about 60 people, MPs supporting him, about the same as Boris Johnson. And this is a number that is based on public declarations of support. And going by this number, Penny Mordaunt has less than 20. It was, I think, 18 at the last count. She is way behind, but there has been some disquiet developing within the party since it emerged that the Rishi team and the Boris team have been in some sort of talks. People have been fearing a stitch-up, and there are many in the party who do not want to see Boris Johnson back. And to bust up that stitch-up, so to speak, Penny Mordaunt has clearly been encouraged to be a candidate. She did win a lot of support from the MPs. She would stand a fair chance of getting support from party members were it to come to that in the second round. So there's a lot that is going on by way of politics, unsurprisingly. A lot of jostling, a lot of trying to feel their way around and see who can muster how much support.
And very quickly, I'm just curious about that point that you made. There's some kind of a tacit understanding, if you will, between the Sunak camp and the Boris camp. Because, you go back 6-8 weeks ago, Boris Johnson had reportedly publicly told his fellow MPs, anyone but Rishi. So what's changed between then and now?
Well, the situation has changed. A lot has changed since then. This is politics. We have to say, of course, that this is not a stitch-up that has been agreed or announced. What we do know is there have been talks between members of the team of Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak. There seems to have been some exploration of that. Nothing agreed, nothing announced. But clearly, members of the parliament, politicians, are, let us say, an adaptable species. And given the new realities, people would be not at all disinclined to leave the past behind if they can build a political future for themselves now.
Okay, Sanjay Suri, we'll leave it at that. It's going to be fascinating. I guess by Monday or so, you'll get a fair idea of which of these 2 or 3 candidates has their nose ahead. Let's go across to our guest. Parvez Alam is editor of Cine Inc. He's joining us from London. Nicholas Nugent is a senior journalist, and Professor David Dunn from the Department of Political Science at the University of Birmingham. Nicholas Nugent, let me start with you first. Which of these 2? It seems like both Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak seem to be the front runners. A, do you see any kind of patch-up between these 2 gentlemen? And B, more importantly, which of these 2 do you believe has the edge in this race as things stand today?
Well, firstly, I think you should widen it out to the 3. You shouldn't ignore Penny Mordaunt. She certainly has quite a lot of following. I think we're going into this as a 3-horse race. And indeed, it can't be more than 3 because of the rules they've set this time are that candidates need to have at least 100 MPs supporting them. Mm-hmm. And there are only 357 Conservative MPs in Parliament. So we're limited to 3. And I personally think it's quite likely all 3 will go in. Yes, rumours of doing a deal, but I don't think that'll happen. Frankly, there's not enough unity within the Conservative Party for them to agree before the vote on who should go ahead. So I think you should consider these 3 front runners, these 3 likely candidates. If anybody else pops up, then I think they're unlikely to get past the first round. In other words, to get 100 members supporting them. So if you're then asking me what happens then on Monday we will have either 3 candidates or 2 candidates or just possibly only 1. But at any rate, by Monday evening, it will be whittled down to a maximum of 2. And I hesitate to predict which 2 they'll be, but I will say this. I would be very surprised if Boris Johnson gets through. So I suppose in a way I am making a prediction. But there are at least as many people who are opposed to Boris Johnson as there are in his support.
It's interesting.
And don't forget, it was Conservative MPs that brought him down 4 months ago. So have they really changed all that much in that time? So my guess is that probably Rishi Sunak and Penny Mordaunt will be the finalists.
Okay, let me ask Pervez Alam.
Then, if I'm right,
because it's interesting what Nicholas Nugent said just a moment ago, that this whole talk about Boris, he feels, is a bit of a red herring. There are as many people who can't stand the sight of him within the Conservative Party MPs as there are perhaps his supporters. So he's a very polarizing, divisive figure. I'm just curious to know, even Rishi Sunak, although his technical abilities, what he brings to the table is without a doubt, what about his likability? That's always been a problem for Rishi Sunak, both within the MPs and more importantly in the wider Conservative members, as it were. He's not particularly seen as a likable guy amongst a majority of Conservative Party members. So does that sort of dent his chances? Pervez Alam, yeah. That's to Pervez Alam.
Is it addressed to me?
Yes, correct. Yes, Mr. Pervez Alam, yeah, that question is to you. Mr. Pervez Alam, can you hear me?
Sorry. Look, if it's about the popularity of Rishi Sunak, then I must point out that Rishi Sunak is popular among the Conservative MPs, but there is a fear among the supporters of Rishi Sunak that if it goes to, the polling goes back to the members of the Conservative Party, and Boris Johnson somehow manages to be there on the list, which means the 2 candidates, then obviously most of the members would go for Boris Johnson. And this is almost clear because a number of them have expressed their desire that Boris Johnson should be back. So Boris Johnson is hugely popular among the Conservative voters. But when it comes to the members of the parliament, then Rishi Sunak has got a very good chance. Now, second thing is that Penny Mordaunt, who is now the only official candidate, Rishi Sunak is yet to declare his candidature. Boris Johnson is still, trying to understand whether he has got support. Yeah. As I was looking at the BBC site, they were saying that according to the people who have expressed their support, that Rishi Sunak enjoys the support of 72 members of parliament, and Penny Mordaunt has got the support of about 17 members, and Boris Johnson about 41. So Boris Johnson may find it difficult to get the support of the 100 members of the parliament. So at the moment, it seems that we are looking at Penny Mordaunt and Rishi Sunak. Now, Penny Mordaunt has said something like this, that she would like to retain Jeremy Hunt as her Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Okay.
So, which means a status quo in a way that she would become the Prime Minister, and there would be no position for Rishi Sunak.
Okay.
I understand that the supporters of Rishi Sunak would like to negotiate a position for Rishi Sunak, either number one, or if there's a kind of a calculation or there's a concept of reconciliation among the Tory members of Parliament, then probably a very good number 2 position for Rishi Sunak. So
okay.
I guess that Rishi Sunak is in for a good opportunity here at this time. It could be number 1, it could be number 2.
Let me ask Professor David Dunn from the University of Birmingham. This whole thing about Boris Johnson making a comeback, he's in the Caribbean, he's on his way back to Britain is what we're told. The reason he got demitted from office was of his own making. I mean, all the Partygate stuff and all the other scandals. Will the people of Britain forgive and forget that, whatever's happened in the last 8 to 12 weeks?
The remarkable thing is the opinion polls say absolutely not. And so it's even more remarkable that there are many members of the Conservative Party in Parliament who think that Boris is their saviour. And why they do that is they think that he brings certain things that no other candidate does. The first is that he has a mandate because he won the election in 2019, and therefore it's his mandate. They feel that replacing Truss with Johnson allows them to avoid an election because they're going back to the status quo ante rather than having yet another change in yet another prime minister. They believe that he unites the Conservative Party in a way that no other candidate does, and they believe that he is an electoral asset because of his bumbling, fun, populist personality. They think that magically that will deliver for them in the same way that it did a few years ago. But what it misses fundamentally, as your question implied, is the fact that in the country as a whole, he is largely despised for his lack of integrity, his lying, and his inability to organise a government that didn't fumble from one crisis to the other. So it's remarkable that he even thinks he's in a position to come back. And it may be, actually, the fact that him and Rishi hasn't declared yet, is that there is some deal being done whereby Johnson will pledge his supporters behind Sunak in order to get some sort of comeback in a lesser office in a new government. Of course, the other thing might be true too, that Sunak actually having, in many ways, having the job on a plate of prime minister in some regards, if he could get Johnson's backing, maybe doesn't want it. When Sunak was running for the office in the summer, he was the prospect was that he would actually be a continuity candidate and of a party that was quite popular. Those things are no longer true. The economy is being crashed. The Tory brand has been completely defiled by Truss. And actually, it looks like whoever's prime minister will lose. So who really wants that? Perhaps people are thinking about the next election rather than the one that's in 2 years'
So
time.
then the question that arises, Nicholas Nugent, is why would anybody want to lead this mess of a Conservative Party? As someone said on Twitter, Liz Truss, in the space of the 45 days that she was in office, she buried the Queen, she buried the pound, and she buried the Conservative Party. So why would anyone want this unenviable job of leading this party and this damaged brand into the next election?
Well, I think a lot of us are wondering that. But the cynical answer is perhaps that whoever succeeds Liz Truss can't do worse. They can only do better. They have a reputation to make. But it's true the party is in quite a big mess. It has a lot of ground to regain if it's going to have any hope of winning an election within the next 2 years. Frankly, that's why the decisions are being taken. Party members are choosing an election winner. And that's one thing Boris Johnson has going for him. But as your previous contributor said, he had that going for him in 2019, but I think he's lost his popular appeal in the country at large, and most Conservative MPs recognise that. So once again, I would be very, very doubtful if he gets beyond the first list, gets to the second round.
Parvez Alam wanted to make a quick point, and then I'm wrapping up after that. Yeah, Parvez Alam.
Yes, there's another issue with Boris Johnson. I mean, all of us know that last summer in June, and there were big issues, and then he had to admit that there were some problems, and he had attended the parties during the lockdown period. So, which means lockdown, as such, as a discipline, as a norm, was not enforced at number 10 Downing Street. Now, there's a big issue before the Privilege Committee of the Parliament. Now, this is a very serious matter. The chairperson of this Privilege Committee is a select committee of the House of Commons, and is Harriet Harman, who is a very senior politician and also a member of the Labour Party. Now, there is a probability, and a very strong probability, that this committee is going to indict Boris Johnson for not telling the truth to the Parliament. There's a big big possibility. And
Okay, I'm completely out of time. I want to thank Parvez Alam, Nicholas Nugent, and Professor David Dunn. Completely out of time. Thank you very much. As we wrap up, let's see if Britain gets a new Prime Minister by Diwali. In case it doesn't, happy Diwali to all of you. Thank you very much for tuning in.